I couldn't live with strangers in my home. It's probably the number one objection I hear to live-in hosting. And the reason, I believe, is founded in fear of the unknown. And the one-phrase catch-all statement covers a whole variety of real reasons. Like, I'm frightened I might have stuff stolen. I'm convinced all guests will leave a trail of mess behind them. And the list goes on. I'm also convinced that there is an unspoken reason, and that is, I don't want to be subjected to the possibility of amorous advances. And of course, that's a very real concern. So my guest today is Kate Lush, who is a professional intimacy coordinator for the entertainment business. She teaches actors how to create convincing scenes of intimacy for film and theatre. And I've invited her to be my guest, as if she can teach people to be convincing when they're acting, she can also teach us how to do the opposite, how to deliberately not give out the wrong signals when we don't mean to. If we can be proactive in our behaviour to avoid trouble because we're equipped to recognise and deal with situations in the proper manner, should they occur, then the fear of being subjected to amorous advances should dramatically diminish. So, over to Kate to tell us what we need to know in her own words. Let's start.
Okay.
Do you want some water?
Yes, let's do that.
So, Kate, I keep on calling you the wrong job title.
Yes.
So I think it's probably best if you just, in your own words,
Okay.
explain what you do.
Okay, so I'm what they call an intimacy coordinator.
Intimacy coordinator.
Yes.
Right.
So I work in film and TV and in theatre, and I coordinate scenes, intimate content, simulated sex and nudity, scenes with emotional vulnerability, with minors. So that's kind of what we do. And so we got a process, and we all rehearse with the actors, work with the director, work out what their vision is, and then look at the actors' consent and boundaries, where they're comfortable. And then from that, we assist with the choreography, and then make it authentic storytelling for the narrative that's trying to be told, but making sure that the actors feel comfortable and supported while they're doing that work.
Wow, that must be really tricky ground sometimes.
It can be. It can be because you're dealing with complex, multiple personalities, different types. You're trying to give the impression of a connection, love, lust, authentically, while still trying to maintain a sense of the actors being able to feel like they're doing their work and they're not actually falling in love with the people they're working with, and that it's a professional space, and that they can go home to their partners at the end of the day and feel like it was just an ordinary day like any other day, or a day like there was stunts. And so there might be like dysregulation in terms of the central nervous system because you've been in the physical position of nudity and with modesty wear, and your bodies have been all over each other, and you've been kissing, and your breath has been involved. And so you've done that work, which can make you feel like potentially it could be quite muddy how it feels sometimes. And so we try and frame it in such a way that it really feels like that their personal self at the start of the day. They go into those scenes, they work all day on those scenes all day, and then we come back to self at the end of the day so that they can kind of wrap it up and leave it behind, and then go home at the end of the day and just kind of go, just did some intimate scenes today, went well, felt supported, what's for tea? That's kind of what we want at the end of the day. Yeah.
Do you ever have to work with a partner? Because I often think you see these romp scenes and it is very convincing.
Yes.
And thinking, well, if I was the partner watching that, a jealousy, why don't you do that with me? All these sort of stuff must well up.
Yeah.
So do you ever go and...
We don't, but we do have the conversation. Most actors are professional, and if they're in long-term relationships, there is an understanding and conversations have been had, because we do understand that, if an actor's been playing a really distressing character, for example, that they will carry some of that home, in the evening with them. And so their partners have had the conversation about, okay, what's going on with you? Why are you so out of sorts this evening? And they could just all day I've just been here. And so those kind of scenes can affect the way a person is. And then equally, then if it is a scene that's an intimate scene, that there will need to be an open conversation between that person and their partner, kind of going, well, look, today I'm doing this scene, you know, now because there are intimacy coordinators, it's much easier to really give it that professional framing. Whereas historically, there was no one looking after these scenes. And actually, quite often directors did say, well, look, just go for it, see where it takes you, or maybe go out for a drink, get drunk, you know, and see if it kind of goes anywhere. And then that kind of thing doesn't work for a personal relationship and about kind of honest conversations, because maybe you were allowed to feel things and the director's like, yeah, I want more of that, more steamy, more heat. And the actors are then kind of really using their own personal experiences of intimacy to kind of feed into that. And those lines then are really muddy. So now if you've got a structure and you've got someone helping you and supporting that and going, okay, so what's the shape of the scene? What's the story we're telling? How are we telling it? What needs to happen? Who's leading it? Where are we cutting? How many thrusts are there going to be? Do we see the moment of penetration? It's all quite technical. Then actually you kind of, the actors can kind of go, that's my choreography. These are my beats I need to hit. This is where I need to go. And the choreography could be wildly creative, but there is no penetration and there are barriers and there's all sorts of bits stuck to stop anything touching each other. You can get in quite exciting positions that normal human beings will probably struggle to get into sometimes. So as much as it looks like it's wildly exciting, it's more just like, how flexible is this actor and how creative is the intimacy coordinator? So yeah. So all of that.
How did you even start to get into that field? What's your background?
So my background is I was originally just as an actor, but I specialised in physical theatre. And for me, physical storytelling was always kind of like my nuts and bolts, even from at school. So there was always something about the human physicality that can tell a really nuanced story. And so actually intimacy coordination, it stays in the world of physical storytelling. It's just very specific. So I'm looking at like the space between human beings, about when you might, attraction just could be eyes across a room. And that's the first beat. And about, you know, whether you look down or look up, you know, and you catch that someone's eyes. And then how long it takes the journey to close the space. And in film and TV, that closing of the space could be, if it's a soap opera, for example, that could be played over 2 years. Do you know, from that first look? Of course, yes. And slowly, we know in those stories eventually there's some sort of dance is happening within that, and then finally, that when the whole audience is behind, we just want them to kiss, and then finally they do, and so that's all physicality really, until there is the moment where there is the touch and the kiss and the passion or whatever happens next. And there was someone who once wrote about it, talking about violence, and because a lot of first intimacy coordinators were stunt coordinators as well. And they were looking at that space of like sexual violence, and how you've got the violence bit taken care of, but not the sexual bit taken up. So how do you work with the consent and make sure that you're not designing or choreographing something that's outside of that person's comfort? So there's that storytelling, and it's there. But one of the original people wrote about it is that really what happens is you've got a script and there's words and people are talking the words, and there's the story in that, but something is happening. And there's only so many words you can use. And at some point, it has to move to physicality. So that might be that when you punch someone in the face. It could be when you choke them. It could be when you snog them. You know, there is a moment where the words just don't serve the purpose anymore. And that's where kind of intimacy coordination really sort of sits in that space, like what needs to happen with the bodies. So that's how I ended up. It had started to become more present. I was working in low-budget horror, which it's a bit like the Wild West of filmmaking, with sort of not so many rules in place. And then also I was working in education, so drama schools. So training young actors who are very vulnerable because the industry wants them to say yes, wants them to push their boundaries, wants them not to say no. And actually, that's not a safe way for people to evolve when they're 18, 19, 20, and they're still trying to work out who they are in themselves, to be pushed to places they're not comfortable with. So that's another place that we kind of went into it really early on. And so, yeah, those two things came together, and I created my company, Safe Sets. And
so just to be clear, that is SETS.
Yes, Safe Sets. Sets. A little play on words there.
No kidding.
Yeah. So, no, we started the company in South Africa.
Wow.
And in 2020. And we started training for Netflix in 2021, training intimacy coordinators all over Europe, and one in India and one in South America. And then since then, we train a cohort of intimacy coordinators most years all over the world. Plus we teach in drama schools, we teach in film schools. Right now, literally today, we've just launched our newest course, which is for working with young people. And it's called Young Performer Support Specialist, which is being abbreviated to the YPS. The Young Performer Support Specialist. So yes, and it's a brand new role. And that looks very specifically at minors who get exposed to violence, emotional violence scenes, where maybe they're watching their parents yelling at each other and they're part of that scene, or maybe that it's something that's sort of sexual violence or in a space of non-consent, and actually how we hold a safe space for young people on sets where they're not exposed to content that they shouldn't be seeing or experiencing when they're age appropriate. It's not the right age for them to be seeing that content. So how do we shoot them out, that kind of thing, and make sure that psychologically they're safe and they're psychologically aware of, how to, what the work is going to involve, what a day on set feels like when you're doing that kind of content, when you have got the pressures of carrying those kind of stories and narrative as well. So that's our latest thing. So interesting space, yeah.
I'm glad I asked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we've known each other we first met when we were both in our 20s, I'm sure. We were. And then I just heard rumours about what you were up to through a mutual friend who sadly died earlier this year, and we reconnected.
Yes.
At the funeral.
Yes.
And you told me what you're doing.
Yeah.
I told you what I was doing, being an Airbnb host. I said, Kate, I'd love to have you on my podcast, because if you can teach people how to do it, you must be able to teach people how not to do it, because you know what works and you can recognize what isn't working to tell them what to do to make it work.
Yeah.
And so I have spoken to potential hosts who say, I couldn't do that because I don't want strangers in my house, which of course is code for all sorts of reasons. They hate people. Well, that's fair enough. I did meet somebody whose neighbour literally chased people off the property with a pitchfork, so he's not a good candidate to being a host.
No. It's
invasion of personal space. It's the irritation of having someone around. But what I'm sure is in a lot of people's minds, but is never actually said, is I am afraid of people coming on to me, and I don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
So I would really love it if we could explore the sorts of techniques that hosts and as guests can employ in order to make it perfectly clear that nothing's going to happen, and without being naive about the situation. Because when we were in the car coming away from the funeral, or going to the funeral one way or the other, I said, would you be willing to have this chat? And you said, yes. And I said, well, what sort of things could you do? And you gave an example with a taxi driver. So you could be in the back of a taxi. Do you remember?
Remind me. The taxi driver chat.
Yes, you said you could be in a taxi, and you could be a male. It could be a male taxi driver, and you could be a female in the back, and you could say, "So what are you doing tonight, mate?" Alternatively, you could say exactly the same words. "So, what are you doing tonight, mate?"
Yeah.
And the meaning and interpretation is completely different.
Yeah.
And it could be done so innocently.
Yeah.
So let's start with about tonality of the conversation.
Yeah.
Do you have any?
No, I've been thinking about it a lot. So, as we're preparing for this, thinking about things. Where are the similarities between the film industry and the things I come up against in the work, and then compare that to real life. And one thing I think about quite often is the way you look at something, the way you're initially walking into it. it's almost like being really cognizant of the fact I am playing the role of an Airbnb host. I am playing the role of a person in a taxi who is asking a question, and I'm having a conversation with a taxi driver to make a convivial conversation and not to try and take them home with me. And it's the same for sets. Sometimes directors, quite often, because they're looking down the lens all day, they're seeing beautiful young actors in sexual positions with very little clothes on, maybe lots of nudity. And then they come to me and they say, Kate, I'm really struggling because I'm falling in love with the actor. And I say to them, look, you've got to look down that lens as a professional. You look down that lens, looking at the way the shot is set up, what the lighting is doing. Is it telling the story you want? And you keep the framing of it in the professional space. You don't look at the actor's skin and how beautiful that 20-year-old is and the way their breath is working or the sounds of their sexual pleasure. You look at it from the technicality. And so I think it's the same thing. I think if you frame yourself and you play the character of host and the conversation of host, or if I play the character of I'm a person in a taxi and I'm saying, hello mate, how was your night? And he's like, yeah, not too busy. And I'm like, oh, what time are you on till? It's the kind of the known banter between the passenger and the taxi driver. In the way it must be for the Airbnb host. It must be a known, like somebody at the reception at a hotel. They're there, they're looking down, always down doing something, then you arrive and they look up. It's like the role of the front of house person in a hotel. So what is my role as a host? So that was one thing I was thinking of. Yeah.
In our overture,
yeah,
you brought up a very interesting scenario.
Yes.
A friend of yours who
yes.
Explain
Shall
that.
I explain
because,
it?
Yeah.
So I have a gay friend who has quite an interesting profile in terms of what he shares on his Instagram profile, and I think it's a space for it's his personal Instagram, and he was looking for accommodation in a new town where he was going to move to. So he was looking for a long-term Airbnb situation, and he had reached out to this person who had advertised that he was a gay host, so he thought that would be a good fit in an area that he wanted to potentially live. So he was looking to stay there for to do a month hire or a month or 2 month stay. And what clearly had happened before, as the conversations were going forward about whether he was or wasn't going to go and see it, the host had clearly looked at his Instagram profile and had liked the look of my friend. And so then the conversation started to develop between the two of them, or certainly from the host side, of kind of like innuendo and proposition about if he wanted to walk around the house in a towel, he'd be more than welcome for him to do so. And my friend was talking to me about this at the time, and he said, what should I do? And I said, well, how is it making you feel? He said, it's making me feel really uncomfortable. I said, okay, so that's sexual harassment. So, actually, and it is something that we talk about a lot, is what does sexual harassment in the workplace look like? What does sexual harassment look when you are climbing on top of each other and you're playing an intimate scene? So it is a language, that in our group we talk about a lot, and it's like you need to recognise it when it's happening to you. And so you express a boundary and you say that, okay, thank you very much for your comment, but I would be looking at this as a relationship between somebody who owns the house and a place for me to stay and feel comfortable. So I would prefer you didn't use that language. And it's actually quite clear. And then the host was backtracked quite a bit. Was, oh, no. I was just joking with you. It's all fine. But I mean, if you did want to leave your door open occasionally. And at that point, I'm like, mate, please do not stay at this person's house. Do not stay there.
No.
It's not safe for you. And it was like he really clearly expressed a boundary. And I think this is really important. Like, people can sometimes confuse what boundaries look like if they haven't been clearly defined. I might have picked something up and I think you're being a bit flirty. And that's okay, and perhaps that's a misunderstanding. And I can then express something and you can say, oh, no, this isn't appropriate. This isn't, I need this to stay professional. And at that point, someone could then apologise and acknowledge that that was inappropriate. And then we go, we'll move forward and we'll just park that. But it's if there's the pushing and you go, actually, I've been really clear and you're still pushing, then you are moving, because it's ultimately, if Airbnb is a business, so it is a place of work, it's your place of work. Absolutely. And so therefore, in terms of sexual harassment, if you're made to feel uncomfortable by innuendo, by comment, by looks, glances, by up and down the body, that's sexual harassment in your place of work. Just because you're the business owner does not mean you can't be affected by people coming into your space and harassing you. And so therefore you can be very clear and you can do it in a nice way. You mentioned something really, really nice in some of your notes you sent to me, and you said you could use a situation where you could go, I don't think we're that kind of establishment. Now, breakfast. So you don't have to be aggressive or defensive, but you can be clear, but you can be fun in your clear, because that might be the way that you are. Quite often on set, if I need to sort of tell someone off, it doesn't gain me any kind of status by shouting at people on set, and people don't want me back if I make the crew feel uncomfortable. But I can find a light way to tell them that actually the language they're using is not appropriate. And actually, you probably know that though, don't you? Yes, you do. So we're not going to say that again. Oh, no, we're not. Okay, understood, good. And you can do it in a way that is quite light in tone, but is quite clear. And it says, actually, this is a no. So this is where the linen is, this is where the bathroom is, and yes. Move that on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I've been hit on twice that I'm aware of.
Yes, tell me about those, Neil. And what did you do?
Well, the first time someone was staying in the Dome. Which,
right.
And
I just visited the Dome.
Yes. And he'd actually been coming several times, and there was an occasion where he just said, "Oh, I've got a bottle of wine. Do come down and have a drink with me." Mm-hmm. And I don't know, there was just something about the way that he said it. I just felt, and I had no previous reason to be wary. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But just something inside me said, that's a definite no.
Yeah.
That it is not just a drink that he's after.
Yeah.
And so I made some excuse and fine. And that was it. However, and he actually came quite a number of times, probably 4 or 5 months.
Right.
Always great fun. We used to have what we called a Wednesday club, where there was a group of us sit around the table and we'd pick some ridiculous conversation and then just talk about it. I remember one of them was Queen Elizabeth in drag, a guy in drag.
Right. Good stuff.
Because one of his students had actually written a thesis on
Okay,
exactly that.
Brilliant.
And all supporting evidence. So it was always great fun. Mm. And then I came back one evening and I had 3 young guys staying with me, and there was a conversation in the kitchen where each one of them relayed a conversation that had happened between this guy and them,
right,
which was innocent, but not.
Yeah.
And because all 3 of them said, it was really weird, he said this. And it's really weird, he said this. And he really said, he did this. So, and I went, okay.
Right.
And so he'd actually left at that point. And so I messaged him to say, I'm really sorry, I can't accommodate you anymore. To which he replied, oh, why is that? And which I ignored, and I've never heard from him since. But I just, that was probably the most serious incident.
It's interesting. 2 things. I've got two things to come back on. Or a question first. One is alcohol. So obviously you're in your home, and there are people here who are here a lot, and a lot of us socially will have a drink in a normal situation in our house with friends and sometimes colleagues. How do you manage that balance? I mean, is it something you do feel comfortable having alcohol? Or do you kind of go, I know that I can have 1 or 2 glasses, but after that, I might not have as much control of myself in terms of things I might say or that I might feel regret about. How does it work? I mean, like, do you have rules? I'm curious because,
when I started, I just thought, am I going to be attracted to somebody? I looked at me first, never mind someone being attracted to me. But I thought, am I going to be attracted to anybody? Well, I've had over 2,000 guests, and of course that's happened. But I made a rule.
Yeah.
And that is, nothing is going to happen.
Yeah.
Period. And I think that's looking down the lens of what you're saying.
Yeah.
I am a host.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want is any of my guests to feel uncomfortable, because the repercussions of that not only could affect reviews and so on, but also I feel so taking advantage of a situation, and it's unfair, and it's just a no-no. So now alcohol. So with the answer to alcohol, I do have drinks with my guests. They're always in the kitchen, which is the most public place in the building, and people can walk in and out from outside. That's the main entry door into the kitchen. So anyone can walk in or out at any time. Similarly, they can walk into the kitchen at any time, and generally. Yeah, and I always try to make it really safe for the person to say yes. So it would be, Kate, would you like a glass of wine?
I'd love a glass of wine.
We'll do that later. There's water on the table right now. Keep praying, you never know what might happen. and then sometimes there's hesitancy. And then I'll say it's my treat, so that they don't think I'm selling them something.
Right.
First of all, and then I look at them and go, look, I'll let you into a secret. This is not all about you. I have to enjoy myself too, and I would love your company to have a glass of wine with me. And they go, normally that does it. They go, okay. And so they sit there, and then we just talk about whatever it is, or we have a gin and tonic or whatever. And I have never ever had a problem. Ever.
Yeah. So Neil, you said that you'd been hit on twice.
Yes.
So what was the second time?
Well, one of my guests took a real shine to me and made it bloomin' obvious. And just, as hosting is my job, I just let this person know that I was busy with the laundry or the washing up or whatever it was, and frankly, I didn't have time for any shenanigans. Thank you. But similarly, I didn't want to be rude. So I actually, when I finished doing all my chores, I got a chair which had a high back, a solid high back dining room chair, and I went and sat facing my guest with the chair physically in front of me. Isn't there a famous picture, Helen Keller or something?
Right,
that back in the 60s.
Okay.
Although I was fully clothed, she wasn't. But
yeah, I don't think that would have told the same message.
I had, but I had a physical barrier between us. Yeah. And just said, oh, so where are you from? And what's your profession? And how long are you here for? And had a perfectly, deliberately, I want to say banal conversation, but recognised that they were my guests, and therefore I was going to be civil and not just dismiss the whole advance. And that was it. Yeah. And I said, well, enjoy your stay, and walked out. And that was,
It's quite interesting. The physical barrier is kind of interesting because that is a real thing. But also just in terms of your barrier of physicality, how you move your body. And this is like one thing when I used to be a movement teacher, thinking about gender and about things that women do and that men do unconsciously, but which are kind of somehow programmed into the back of our mind as to what they mean. So quite often, like if a man is standing, quite often he stands with his hands more towards the back, which is kind of sort of genitalia forward and open and available, kind of, and it's sort of something primal. Whereas women tend to cover. They maybe here across here, something more here, more closed, as a kind of a sort of protection. Now, if you then play and you're moving into a sort of a flirty space, it might be more hair twirling or chest touching or skin, just general changing the body to this, yes, sort of self-touch, which even though I'm closed is actually quite sort of sensual. So it's kind of then as well, how do I physically maintain a professional posture that is somewhere potentially, you could argue, in a more masculine space, taking the kind of the femininity out of this kind of movement, which might be perceived as being a little bit flirty, but actually just kind of, right, okay, so tomorrow morning we're going to do this for breakfast, or this is this is the fridges and everything else, checkouts at this time if you need to stay longer, and just being more kind of like a square professional space, like almost like a job interview for, and closing that space off might be something that worked in a similar way to actual physical barrier. But then also I was thinking about kitchen, like if you have an island in a kitchen or something, and someone's got that, you can place yourself, making yourself across a space or across a table, and doing something like that. So that kind of thing. Actually, I think the barrier is a really nice way to do it. But if you don't have that chair to hand,
yes,
because you don't want to be like aggressive and not. But it's being mindful of the fact that, these kind of gestures, it takes the eye of the person, I've got a V-neck on now and it takes the eye to my chest, right? So rather not do that. Yeah. keep your hands in a good, sensible place and think about that. Yeah.
And similarly with the tone of voice.
Yes.
We talked about the taxi.
So
what tips would you've just described how the hands behind the back is thrusting your pelvis forward. So how similarly could you make a more, could you explain an analogy similar to that in how you use your voice when talking to somebody and trying to give the signal no?
I think so. I think it almost is like playing a character, playing the role of. And what is my script? And what is my necessity of script? Hello, how are you? Did you find the place okay? I'll show you where your room is. I need to tell this bit of a script. Actually kind of getting what your banter looks like, and so that you're telling everyone what it is. And sticking to that script probably will help you anchor in very clear communication. I'm the host, and exactly as it would if I'm in a reception in a hotel, it's very simple. We know what that dynamic is there behind the desk. It's very clear, and they've got that. Okay, who are you? Let's check in. Let me look at the book. Yes, got you there. Okay, so you're in this room. Can you just sign this thing? It's very functional. So it's about maintaining that sense of this is a clear function. My job is here. Like you said, with that second divert, you made yourself busy with the chores that needed to happen with, and you're too busy as a host to be entertaining such things. But, so you get to the practicals. And I think that probably would help with the tone. If you know what your script is for the check-in, then you can be quite clear. And then how you then say, okay, is that everything? All right, well, I'll see you a little later, and then leaving that situation while they settle themselves in. And even if you do come back together in a social communal space later on in the evening and you're in the kitchen, that's then a new sort of a agreement, and then you can kind of think about, okay, what's my starting script in the evening? And this, when you're saying wine in the kitchen, it's kind of like, if there's a rule, yes, wine in the kitchen, but never in the bedroom. So whatever happens or where it's got to, we're being a bit loud, why don't we go to my room because we're that way? Never. So there's never. Never. We never drink in the bedrooms. In fact, don't take your red wine in my bedrooms. I don't want you to ruin my sheets.
The carpet.
And the carpet. In the kitchen, please, where it's tidy. Again, so even playing with that, like, oh goodness me, couldn't possibly drink in the bedrooms. What happens if it falls on the duvet?
Yeah.
You know, whatever. But yeah, so something in that way. I think being really clear, knowing what your role is, knowing what the shape of your what a host, you know, a person welcoming someone into their home, where they're going to be a guest, what that dynamic should look like, and that would help, I think.
And that's interesting you say that, because one of the dynamics that I really do notice is that I am on home ground, and the person walking through the door is not.
Yeah.
And there is inherently, with most people, I should say, there is that respect that I'm on your space, so therefore subconsciously they're thinking these are your rules. And sometimes it's too strong and I have to work to sort of get them to relax, you know. My goal is to make this a home from home, which means that you've got to loosen up a bit.
Yeah.
And I normally do that with a cup of tea on entry. So I call it the tea trap, which I mentioned in many podcasts before, so I'm not going to go into it now. But it's a chance to actually get to talk and find out about the person. And I physically see them relax sometimes, literally, just the whole body is just... And at the end, they're a different person. They realise they're not in with a mad axeman.
No, it's establishing the tone. It's establishing the world in which they're walking into. There's, like you're saying, it's almost like a power imbalance, or and an unknowing. You know, it's your space. They don't know. They don't know what they're walking into. You know, they also, as a single traveller, you know, and certainly for myself, when I look at Airbnb or where I'm going to stay, how do I feel about going into a host's home? If it was a single male host, for example, do I feel comfortable? And so how do you, in fact, establish the comfort in the other way, you know, as well for the people coming in? And that's the thing, disarming, being clear about what the structure of it is, being very clear about how things function, where they are, giving a person cup of tea. Even you did it to me when I arrived here today. It was lovely. I was like, it's a cup of tea. It's a perfect time of day for a cup of tea. Mid-afternoon, it's just about the right time for a cup of tea. Coffee would have been the wrong offer at that point. Tea was perfect. Oh yeah, I'll have a tea, thanks. Very nice. You know, it's that sort of stuff. And so I think that's the clarity of that is really good. I think if you set the tone, like it's almost like laying out your stall. This is the way it functions, and I want it to be a home from home. So anything you need, just ask. I'm here. Usually on a Wednesday night we have this. You're more than welcome to join. All right, well, I'll leave you to it then. Off you pop, and then you'll go away and you do your thing, and then they find their grounding, and they get their bag in, and they get their stuff down, and they start to understand what the space functions like. So they become more relaxed, and things are where they're meant to be. Which, of course, as a super host, everything's been thought of, and they'll feel comfortable. And then when they take a step out of their room and they come back into that communal space, they have an understanding of what that's going to look like, and because you've set out the stall.
Also, there is the boundaries between guests themselves.
Yeah.
So that has to be managed. And one rule I have is that one of my house rules is I never expect to come across a stranger I did not know was in the house, which is code for, if you're going to invite somebody back, I need to know.
Yeah.
And it has been very, very rare in the 10 years that I've been hosting that a Saturday night pickup has been brought into the house.
Right.
I'm sure it's happened and I haven't been aware of it, but one or two times I should think out of 2,000 plus.
Yeah.
But it's very important to make the guests feel comfortable with each other.
Yes.
And I have a very specific technique to do that.
I'd love to know that. Tell me, how would you do that? Because as soon as you said it, I was like, oh my goodness me, how do you even manage that? Because you're not in the house with them and you can't police them.
No.
So tell me your technique. Fascinated.
So the purpose of the tea trap is to get to know a little bit about you. I know my script. I'm going to use your language now.
Yeah.
I know my script,
Yeah.
which is how far have you come from? Why are you here? What are you aiming for? Normally it's for business or for education.
Yeah.
So what are you aiming for? In other words, what are your goals? What are your ambitions? And I suppose in a way, I'm trying to find out what's the price that you have paid in order to, I mean, not in terms of commitment, not financial, but in terms, sometimes it's financial, but in terms of commitment and everything else, what price have you paid to do what it is that you're trying to achieve or to start that journey? And I'll tell you why. Because as soon as I know those information, and of course it's not like the Spanish Inquisition, the guests don't even realise that's my script.
Yeah.
If they do realise, it's gone wrong.
Right, yeah.
The reason I do that is because invariably, whilst we're having that cup of tea, another guest walks in, either as it did this evening, so Stephen walked in, or they come in through the kitchen. Okay, well, let's take this evening. I did it to you.
Yeah.
What did I do?
Yes, you welcomed him in and you introduced me to him and said, this is Kate, and you said how we knew each other and what our background was. So you gave him my story as to who I was, and so he then has context for who this person in the kitchen is. You set out my stall.
Yes, exactly, and that's very, very deliberate. I actually did it instinctively.
Yeah.
But I have 2 or 3 specific things that are on that script. First is to tell the other person the name.
Yeah.
Second is to tell them why they're here. And the third thing is to edify them each, which means I build them up and tell them why I respect them or why I admire them.
Wow.
Okay. Now you're not actually a guest tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of staying the night, so I didn't quite push the last one.
Yeah.
But I would have said, Stephen is incredibly knowledgeable in the food industry, and someone with his expertise, I'm in awe of.
Right.
And Kate is doing this job.
Intimacy coordination.
Intimacy
coordination.
Why do I find that difficult?
Yeah. Oh. It's because you want to tell you.
I keep wanting to say intimacy coach.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
Right.
And I said, no, it's not that, because that's real sex. I don't know how to do that.
So I would say Kate is an intimacy coordinator. She works in the film industry, making actors look, and anyone who can do that, I'm absolutely full of admiration for, because I wouldn't know where to start. You see? Now, I have given both guests permission to like each other.
Right. Amazing.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They know what their names are. They know why. They know what their profession is, so they've got the topic to talk about.
Yeah.
And they both know that they have earned my respect for what they have done or from what they've told me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which means they then feel safe in each other's company because they have my permission to feel safe.
Yeah.
And then I just sit back and the conversation goes.
Yeah.
And somebody the other day, about 2 months ago, for the first time in 10 years, he said, Neil, what do you do that makes us all, as strangers, feel comfortable in your house? And I said, that is very astute of you to even think that I do something, because no one has ever asked me that question before. You're right. I do something, and I'm delighted you don't know what I do.
Wow, how interesting.
But that's what I do. And I said, actually, mate, you do the same thing, because in your job, you walk into factories with a clipboard because you're recording what everyone's doing. And you told me you did this, and this, so that they relaxed and felt comfortable with you recording what they did. And he said, oh, yeah. I never realised. And then about a week later, I got a random message from him after he'd left saying, I've been thinking about what you're saying, and I'm now formalising what it is that I do. And that plays beautifully back into, I've just realised, what you were saying about know your script.
Yeah, yeah. It's so interesting because actors have to trust me. I meet them. Sometimes I meet them on the day I'm doing an intimate scene with them. I might be working on that production for a long time, and I'm working with some of the same people all the time. But quite often there's like a day player who's someone who's literally just in for the day, or it's their first day of a few days they're doing. And I meet them that morning. And I might have had a one-to-one with them. How am I building trust? Because I've now got to get to know this person, and I've also got to let this person know that this person's going to be good to work with, that I've had this kind of conversation, and so that when then we do an icebreaker, we're bringing them onto the same page together, because there's always an power imbalance in that space. But they have to trust me. They have to know that I'm taking care of them both. And it's like, yeah. Absolutely. I'm like, oh, I spoke to this. He's a little bit nervous about the scene, really looking forward to it. Nice person. Seems he really wants to take care of you, which was really sweet. So, but I think actually we're going to need to take care of him, to be honest. So they're like, okay, great, good to know. And I'm like, oh, this person's lovely that you're going to work with. They're really respectful. They've done lots of scenes, so they're quite experienced. So they'll take care of you. Yeah, we do that work. Yeah, yes. Absolutely. Yeah. But another complete weird sidebar, and this is completely off any script, is so when I was formerly an actor, like all actors, the reason I met you, for example, Neil, was I was just, odd jobbing, right? Yes. Did a little bit of carpentry for you, completely random. But I used to do, for years, I did energy performance certificates when they first came in. So the domestic energy assessor. So if you're selling your house,
oh yes, totally
random. It was a side hustle because it was all in. I could book the times when I did it. I did it for 10 years. I did it right from when they started until the intimacy coordination work actually really took off, and I just simply wasn't able to do them anymore. But I quite enjoyed it. I poking around people's houses, seeing what they'd done with the loft conversions. But I had to turn up to those people's houses, quite often vulnerable older people who are maybe they're moving to sort of senior living sort of situation, they're by themselves. I have to go in every room in their house with my clipboard. I have to talk to them. I have to then take photos of stuff. I have to go into their bedrooms and take photos of things. I have to go into their loft space where all their stuff is stored and take photos of things and walk around. I can be in their house, depending on the size of the house. I could be in their house for an hour, 2 hours. And quite often single women at home by themselves. Now, this job was most often done by men, and obviously just the fact that a woman in her mid-40s, as I was then, turned up with a ladder under her arm, generally in itself put people at ease. But actually, they've got to trust you. You're going to walk around without them with you. And thinking about that, and it was that, again, I think it was probably a script in there, I'm Kate, I'm your domestic energy assessor, so this is the way I'm going to work, this is what I need to do. So I've got my clipboard and I'm going to be sketching out your house, and I'll be measuring, and this is my laser, and this is how I'm going to measure that. And then I'll be taking photos of your radiator knobs and your thermostat, and I'm going to go into each room and I'll be doing these in your windows and things. So it's, okay, so you understand what's going to happen. I think that's, again, it just makes them settle, and they know what you're going to do, and then you stick to your script. I say I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to do this thing. So, and that, I think, really the consistency of it, the authenticity of it. I say I'm going to do one thing, and I do that thing. And then we trust each other to stay within the rules of that. I'm going out this evening at 7 o'clock, and I'll be back at 10 or whatever. It's simple things like that. Very clear, because I have a life, and you're a guest in my house, and I'm going to go outside of this, and then I'm going to come back later. And whatever it is, I think that almost really make people feel that they know where they are, where they're at relative to you and to the expectations.
You mentioned in a conversation about caring. There are lots of little things that, as a host, I employ to show that I care.
Yeah.
For instance, I've got a smart lock on my entry door, and that gives every time anyone enters, it's registered, so I can look at the registry to see who entered when. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when I have guests from abroad who don't know the country and they decide they're going off to London to go partying or whatever,
yeah.
Well, they don't really know what they're going to because it's the first time they've been here.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll wake up at odd hours in the night, as one does, and I'll just check my phone to see if they've come back. Yeah. And then I'll see that 3:30, yeah, they got back. Whew, okay.
Go home safely.
The point is, next morning, I actually say that. And I actually say, by the way, glad to see you had a good time, I guess. Caught the last train because I see you came from the lock that you came in at 3:30. So I said, that's a relief. I don't need to ring your parents to tell them to start ringing around hospitals.
Yeah.
And we have a laugh.
Yeah.
But the intention is that they feel, oh, actually, I do have a guardian angel who actually is looking out for me. And similarly with people, but in order to do that, also people who are staying for probably more than a week, I will say, listen, would you mind if I have your parents' phone number? Because if something happens to you, I wouldn't know where to start to get help that is relevant. And I say, look, just write it on a piece of paper. I'll keep it in the safe, and when you go, I'll burn it. So, and I do. And most people say, oh, thank you, and they do. For instance, Stephen, who you met, he had a major stroke last year and he was off work for about 9 months.
Wow.
So when he turned up again, because he's back to work, I said, Stephen, I think I better have your wife's phone number because you never know. And he said, oh, yes, that's a very good idea. So he gave it to me.
Yeah, wow. It's such a fascinating world because you are establishing relationships with strangers. Yes. And you're being their housemate or establishing a safe home space for them that feels like a home. And they might come for a day, they might come for a week, they might be regular people, or they might just be like, come and gone. But somehow landing them in that, oh, it's Neil.
Yes.
And that's, hats off to you. I mean, seriously.
Well, it's not difficult, that's the thing. If you know... I'm going to adopt your language and say, when you know your script. I love that. When you know your script. And play it out. And stick to it. In whatever conversation topic that you engage with, whether it's about their personal safety and who to contact if they have a problem, whether it's about the essentials of showing people, whether it's the T-trap and introducing people to make them all feel comfortable. If you know your script and work it out and stick to it, I love it. I think that's my big takeaway from this conversation. So
great.
Thank you.
No, pleasure. One thing that has it ever happened that actually you've learned? I mean, you said about the one who'd propositioned you also made inappropriate comments or comments that made some of your guests feel uncomfortable. Have there been other situations where guests the following day, maybe you've already left for the evening and they're mooching around in the kitchen, that someone then says to you, oh, actually, it was a bit awkward last night after you left, like something happened? Or do you find the guests do, once you've established that, the way they're professional, it's almost like a professional relationship with each other as guests, whether they manage to maintain that, or have there ever been boundaries you feel that have been crossed that you've had to manage those situations?
No. The incident that I've relayed is, off the top of my head, the only time where anything like that has happened. And the extraordinary thing is, Kate, for the first 7 years of my hosting, I did none of the rooms were lockable. I think that is more of a reflection of society and actually how good people are and how we are being brainwashed. And I don't want to get political, but how we're being brainwashed about how terrible everyone is. Or maybe it's the dynamic that I'm vulnerable because I can't lock my door, so therefore, I don't want to make anyone else feel uncomfortable in the way they could to me. So everybody it's the mutual assured destruction policy.
Also, I suppose, because of the rating system and everything else, and because of the nature of if you're going to go into an Airbnb that is a hosted room share situation rather than a self-contained unit, arguably if you behave badly...
You're out.
Everyone's going to put on the rating like you did.
Yes.
Don't ever let this person stay here.
Yeah.
Don't ever take this into your house.
The phrase was, I cannot recommend this guest in any way whatsoever.
Yes.
I've only used that about twice.
Yeah, interesting. Wow.
There was an incident about 3 years ago where some complete random person outside the house was completely off his head on something, and he was half-heartedly, although in his mind intentionally, trying to break the front door down. I mean, it was pathetic. And he was sharing his intention of what he was going to do to the woman in his mind, and it wasn't very pleasant. So I actually, when he rang the doorbell, I went round to thinking it was an Amazon driver who got lost, but it was 5:30 in the morning. So I thinking, well, it must be a guest who's got locked out and can't come in. And then I went round and met this person completely off their head. It must have been in his late 20s, I think.
Wow.
And so I just tried to direct him back to his house. About 5 minutes later, 5 police cars came and picked him up. So a bit over the top on terms of the police. But anyway, because several neighbours had reported him.
Right.
And I just thought, if that guy had got into the house because someone had been foolish enough to leave the back door open or something, what would have been the consequences? And as a result of that, it actually cost me about £1,000. I changed all the locks in the house internally, and everyone now has a thumb turn.
Right.
So everyone can secure themselves inside the house.
Yeah.
I will offer a key if they want them, but I always say you've got a safe, and I don't think underwear and shirts are top of the theft list. They always laugh, say, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
And either I've been very lucky or very naive, but to this date, I've never had an incident of theft or inappropriate behaviour where someone walking. So, there has been once or twice when I didn't have the locks where someone inadvertently walked into the wrong room because that's the room they stayed in last time they visited.
Okay.
And although the name is on the door, they just were in automatic because it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and they were terribly embarrassed. Yeah. But that was just sort of life happens moment. Yeah.
No, I think that's really, it's lovely actually, and I think it's to be celebrated. I don't think we do enough. I don't, we are communal by nature, human beings, we're sociable. We like meeting new people, we like having conversations with strangers, we like meeting people from different countries and different places. And there is too much narrative around the world that we're all awful and scary and want to rob each other blind. And actually it's so lovely being able to travel and have these conversations with strangers.
Yes.
And it's just to make a space that's possible is it's just divine, it really is. You know, it's almost like, when you're camping and a child and you make best friends for a week and then you go somewhere else and maybe they're your pen pal for the next few years, that sort of interaction. It's nice to know that it still exists, even in our adult selves, at any age, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've just had a thought, Kate.
Yep.
Cultural differences. Have a blast at that one.
All right. Whoa. Well, that's massive. In my line of work, that's huge. It must be huge for you too. Religion. So our company was built in South Africa, which is an incredibly religious society, but different religions, different kinds of. I mean, actually, probably a lot rooted in Christianity, but a lot of Muslim as well. On set, I had a very interesting. There's the grips. So they're the kind of they're big chaps normally who do big heavy stuff and they move around the cameras and stuff like that. So they're part of the camera team, extension of that, but they're generally quite big lads. Particular team in South Africa, they're a Muslim team. They're a very well known and well used company, but they're pretty much made up of exclusively Muslim men. And we were doing a production that had a high level of sexual content, like massive. It's it's a Netflix show and there's a lot of sex in it. And then they do the work. They're super respectful. They're super polite. They are happy for a closed set to be nowhere near it and to be elsewhere. And they're never to be the first people if they're concerned that someone is not being taken care of on set or something is not right. They'll come to me and they'll make sure that they'll check in that everything's fine. But one day we had a behind the scenes. Netflix were filming behind the scenes footage, and they came up and they said, in terms of their consent and boundaries, they were like, we can't be in any of that footage. We can't be seen to be doing this work. It's not appropriate. So can you have a chat to the Netflix team and make sure they don't film anyone with our T-shirts on, that's not... And you're like, no, absolutely. And it's very specific. These people have to do their jobs. They have to work. They can't say, I'm not going to film on this job, because they all have a livelihood, and this is the industry. And we do have to pivot. It's sexual storytelling on authenticity, but if you're someone who's a Zulu actor, what that looks like as a culturally acceptable way sexual expression is completely different, potentially, to someone else who's from a different region or from a different background. And then you've got, it's super interesting. And historically, they didn't have any set intimacy on film and TV, and suddenly you're taking actors who are very religious, very community and family-based, tight communities. Suddenly they're being seen to do scenes, and people would then get these assumptions that they are prostitutes, or they're doing it for real, and then we have to manage those situations to kind of go, oh no, it's choreography, and then there's barriers, and then it's consent, and it's acting, and it's storytelling, and actually then having to support the actors when they're getting kind of public, because of course with social media now, public will go straight to them directly. I had one actor once, she got banned from her church group. She got excommunicated from her community because of the content. And so then, we try and help manage in that space. So for us, it's massive, and it's a huge consideration. And so then, therefore, how we approach the people, how we talk about the intimacy. Right now, we're training 2 people from Kenya, 1 from Rwanda, 2 from an area in South Africa called KwaZulu-Natal, which is doesn't currently have any intimacy coordinators, and it has very rural communities. And I was working that side once when we were talking about sexual harassment. I was giving a sexual harassment talk to the crew, and a local person was there talking to me about, she said, I'd love you to come and do that workshop with some young people I work with. I think it'd be really useful. Because it's also really important that the girls know how they should dress so that they don't get sexually assaulted. And I was like, that's not what my talk is about. A person shouldn't have to modify their clothing so as not to be sexually assaulted. And she was like, no, absolutely, they will get sexually assaulted if they dress like that. You need to tell them they can't. And I was like, I don't think I can run your session for you. Because culturally speaking, me as this white English person, I don't understand that. And I should say a woman should be able to wear what she likes. It's up to the person who's going to assault them to behave themselves. It's not up to that person to modify. But culturally, that for this particular region, there was this theory or this idea that that's what's needed. That's what the narrative needed to be to make people stay safe. And then therefore, I wasn't culturally then the right person to hold that workshop, because I can't comprehend in my very Western mind that that's okay. So, culturally speaking, Neil, for you, what experiences? I mean, where does this play in your world here? What do you have to do?
Well, there is an occasion in some cultures you don't touch the women. So sometimes when I put my hand out to shake, they play their script and they put their hands behind my back, and I get that message. But there was I found it a fascinating conversation, which I initiated. Because there was a Chinaman, someone from Western Germany, where there was a strong Russian influence, a lady from Holland, and a guy from Tunisia. And we were all around the kitchen table. The conversation was going really well. We were getting on really well. And then there was a lull. And I thought I'd spice it up a bit. And I said, I just want to ask, have you seen your parents naked? I was genuinely interested.
From a cultural perspective?
I think... I can't remember exactly the context of the conversation, but I was thinking, I've seen both my parents naked when I was a kid, and I think that was part of their sexual education. They let us, as children, deliberately see where we were heading. I've never asked them, but right. But when I think back on it, on how it was sort of engineered that we saw Dad in the bath, I just thought. And he'd just tell us a bednight story, and it was just to defuse any fascination. It was just like, oh, right, whatever.
Body's a body.
A body's a body, and this is what it's going to look like, and so what? That was what my takeaway personally, and so I was interested if that was normal. So that's why I asked the question. Anyway, the Dutch lady said, yes, of course, I've seen everything. We don't have any doors on any of the rooms, bathroom included. So yes, of course I have. The Chinaman was rather reserved. He said, I've seen my father naked, but not my mother. And the German guy said, well, it's our tradition that we have saunas, and yes, everybody goes into the saunas naked. That's just how it is. And the Tunisian said, no way, no way. And I said, so I asked him, I said, would you allow your children to see you naked? I would certainly not. And anyway, the conversation moved on. And then everybody left, and it was just me and the Tunisian. And as soon as the door was shut behind the last guest, he said, I can't believe you asked that question. In front of a lady. He was appalled. And I just thought, wow, how I just found that fascinating. And I mean, he'd been a long-term guest, so we had a very good relationship, and it didn't taint the relationship. But I was really intrigued by his utter horror at that question. And I thought, okay, well, there are areas where you don't go, and that was obviously one of them.
Yeah, very interesting. As you were talking about the shaking of the hands, which of course is interesting and culturally is different. COVID was quite interesting for this. The way it changed, the handshaking and hugging. So suddenly, I was doing a lot of martial arts during COVID. It was kind of really big halls and, with masks on and stuff. And so obviously for bowing, I just suddenly became the person who bowed at everyone on set. So everyone was doing elbows. I'd be like, hello, hello. And then I found there was this transition to going back when COVID had passed. People suddenly didn't know when, do I take your hand? Do I not take your hand? Do I hug you? I would have hugged you, but now I haven't been hugging. Teenagers going through school who would have had these social interactions and these engagements where they started to hug each other, or they started to go to clubs together and started to kind of play in these spaces, didn't have these experiences. And then suddenly they found themselves at university, and they hadn't had the messy sixth form years, the sort of being drunk and throwing up and having a go at kissing someone after you've been vomiting in a corner and someone pushing you away. That's a learning space, right? And they suddenly found themselves getting done up for sexual harassment at university because they didn't know how to... It's like there was a schism in their education, so they didn't know what the line looked like, and they just went from nothing to everything in a heartbeat. But in talking of hugging, I think there's this really lovely thing about, because not everybody loves hugging. Some people do. Most people do in our culture, but obviously different cultures. I've worked with actors who have from Chinese heritage, and who've spoken about their parents never hugging them through their whole childhood. That hugging's simply not a thing. Whereas I've worked with people from Brazil, and they're like, we're a total hug culture. You can't tell me that people don't like hugging. And then you dig into it, and you'll find someone in the room who goes, no, I hate hugging. Or my sister, there was one that was a director once, she said, oh, my sister hates hugging, actually. She can't stand it. She's like stiff as a board when you do it. And I just keep hugging her, and she hates it. And I'm like, you're literally telling me you're pushing someone's boundaries. You've clearly said she doesn't like it. You're clearly telling me that every Brazilian loves it, yet while telling me they simply don't because your sister doesn't. But I tried to explain to her, I said, look, there is a universal language, right? I do this when I see you. And that literally says to you, I'm going to hug you. And if you then go in return, it means you're saying, yes, hug me. It's so simple. And if you go, I'm like, okay, pivoting, or pivoting. Lovely to meet you, please come in. Because we hugged. We had this little micro dance. I arrived and we kind of went, oh yeah. And it's so interesting. You can read that. I'm going to hug you. Are you happy for me to hug you? I'm happy for you to hug me. Brilliant. And maybe that, I don't know. Do you get so close with your guests and know them well enough that hugging is normal? Yes,
I do.
Yeah.
Yes. And there's a young lad who I have basically mentored for the last year, and he has achieved what he wanted to do. And now whenever we meet, he gives me a great big hug. And it is a hug of appreciation. It's a way of him saying, thank you for everything you've done. That's it. There was another occasion where a guy came and he stayed for 2 nights, I think it was, with his girlfriend, and he was really excited because he was going to propose to her. I thought, oh, how sweet. I've had several proposals here, actually.
Oh, nice.
Some very elaborate and some quite basic. Yeah, we even had wedding nights and all sorts, yeah. 1 or 2 in the dome.
In the dome. In the dome.
Anyway, this is in the house. And as he was leaving, I hadn't seen him in the interim time. As he was leaving, I said, "So, how did it go?" And he burst into tears because he'd been rebuffed.
Oh no!
And this was just outside the kitchen door on the patio, and I just instinctively hugged him.
Yeah.
And he just leant into it while he sobbed his eyes out. And in the moment, it seemed absolutely the right thing to do. I was a complete stranger. There was no consequence in him being open with me. But I just felt this was such a blow to him, that to have some comfort from somebody.
Yeah.
But I was also very conscious, and I would say deliberate, that it was in a very, very public space, so that it was, in fact, it was in view of the cameras that overlooked the back of the house, so that there could be no comeback that was inappropriate or that I had ulterior motives. So, but he left, I hope, in a better space. If that made that. Now, had that conversation happened inside, maybe if it had happened in the room that he was staying in or something, I probably would not have done that.
Yeah.
But because of the context of where it was, and from my mind, the security, knowing I was being recorded, and the body language was very obvious, I would hope, to anybody with a sensible head on them, that this was purely a comforting hug.
Yeah.
Yes. And of course, I've got regulars, and there's one guy who holds the record, who's been my guest 1 night a week for 6 years.
Right.
I mean, every time we meet, it's just, hey!
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to his, I went to his stag do, for goodness sake. I invited, how nice is that?
Yeah, it's lovely.
So it really is like mates coming to stay, and they just happen to pay me.
Yeah. So as you were just talking then, I started to think about spatial relationship, and how you have to configure yourself into someone, if there's an escape route or something. Is that something you ever have to think about?
Yes. And it was made really clear with a neighbour of mine who's lived, she's actually moved now, but she was about 7 doors down from me. She worked in she was a social worker.
Oh, yeah.
And she got it wrong on one occasion and was actually held at gunpoint for about 2 hours.
Right.
Because she had not positioned herself in the right place. Now, she was seeing someone who was disturbed, and she knew that before she went in, but didn't realise they had a gun.
Yeah.
The person threatened to shoot her and then shoot themselves, but fortunately it didn't happen. But yes, and I know that psychotherapists, when they have clients, have to think very carefully about where they sit in case the client suddenly gets triggered in some way, and the psychotherapist has to leave the room.
Yeah.
So, and I also heard of a landlord, I've actually met a landlord who went into a house with tenants to sort out, to get some rent because they were in arrears.
Yeah.
And he said, I went into the room and then the daughter basically started stripping off in front of him. And so he thought, right, I need to get out of the room because I know exactly where this is going.
Yeah.
And he made a quick exit because he was, as it happened, actively by the door and not the other way around.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably only if you're suspicious that something's going to happen. I very rarely feel threatened in that way where I have to think about that.
Yeah.
But the story that I just gave about giving the hug in front of the camera, that was very much a deliberate, because I had had probably had 5 conversations with this person.
Yeah.
So there was no history, there was no there was minimal rapport. Let's say there's no rapport, but there was minimal rapport, and therefore I had to handle it very.
Yeah.
It was a split decision, as we often make these, but. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as well, this is a difference between the fact that you're a host and you're not. It's a fine line. You are a human being in your own home.
Yes.
And you're Neil.
Yeah.
And that people come to stay with Neil, you know, and it says on your profile who Neil is, and they've made an active choice to go to Neil, not to the name of the house.
Yes.
They've come to Neil's house. And so therefore it does actually slightly change the dynamic. It's all inherently already has changed just by the nature of it.
Yes, and that was played out by one guest who told me that she was a bikini designer for Tesco, as it happened, as one of her clients, and she said that her partner had pointed out to her that she used to go and say, I don't know, she used to say, I'm going to Hatfield to stay in Rose Cottage.
Right.
And he pointed out that she changed her language without realising it, saying, oh, I'm going to stay at Neil's place when I go to Hatfield again.
Yeah.
So, and he was pleased because that meant she felt comfortable, and it was the person. And that's why I always say my tagline is create a home from home. How can I create a home from home?
Yeah. Yeah.
Day 3 of hosting, I thought, how am I going to do this with strangers in my house? And I said to myself, you get what you expect.
Okay, so elaborate.
And therefore, I need to expect to have my best mate coming to stay. So I made the decision, everybody who comes through that door is my best mate coming to stay with me. If that was true, which of course it isn't, they're complete strangers.
Yeah.
If that was true, what would you do?
Give them a
hug. Sometimes, yes. But if it's a referral or something, or they're obviously genuinely pleased to see me because of what they've heard, then yes, that sometimes happens.
Yeah.
But if your best friend come to say, would you smile when you saw them? Of course you would.
Yeah.
Do that. Would you open the door for them? Of course you would. Would you carry the bag for them? Of course you would. Would your whole body language, would you be one of delight to see them? Of course it would. And do that.
Yeah.
If they'd just flown in from India and have been travelling for 18 hours and it's 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, would you say, mate, the co-op is open quarter of a mile up the hill, if you want to go and get some food, off you go?
Yeah.
Or would you say, look, I don't do food, but you've been travelling, would you like some scrambled egg on toast? What does that cost you?
Yeah.
70p.
Yeah.
What does it buy you?
Yeah.
Oh, they love you immediately.
Yeah.
And all you're doing is just being considerate, just treating them like your best mate. And you know what?
Yeah.
They become your best mate.
Yeah. But also, the people who are our best mates, we don't hit on. They don't hit on us either. There's a mutual respect there.
Yes.
That of just friendship that has no confusing boundaries. That's like is really clear. So if you're my friend and I'm your friend, and you know, there's nothing ever going to go on here because we've been mates for 20 years. Like, it's a simple exchange of like.
Yes.
There's no ambiguity in that.
I've never thought of that.
Yeah. So yeah. Potentially.
I'm thinking back over all the interactions with all my guests, and you're absolutely right. They're my best mate. I'm not going to hit on my best mate.
No.
And they don't hit me.
No, you don't. You don't. Also, like if you're a teacher, it's the same thing as well. Like, you know, for years I taught in adult education and further education, so always plus 18s. So everybody is, no one's a minor.
Yeah.
And hundreds of people, hundreds of all the ages, of all the genders, of all the sexualities. And it's just, you just don't look through the lens of a potential partner in that space. these are people I'm going to teach. They need to trust me. They need to be able to trust my opinion. You know, that they need to know that there's no ulterior motive in the way I'm marking them or not marking them. You know, and then it's very clear. And, you know, when it comes to, and obviously it's adult space and I'm teaching theatre. So inevitably there's a performance at the end. And inevitably, because it's theatre and everyone likes to go drinking in theatre after. So you'll do the final performance, what it is, and then you'll all go drinking. And even in that space, that is still an extension of the learning space. So even then, if they're getting, you know, drunk, and even if I've had a few too many to drink, like, there's literally a switch. It's like, I will never see you through the lens of a potential partner. I will see you as the person I've just trained, and maybe now the course is finished, it might be the last time, and now maybe you'll be a colleague in the future, and that's where you'll then be. You'll be a colleague, you know, an equal professional maybe at some point, but you'll never be a potential partner. And it's very, for me, that was always super clear. I never ever felt any, although I sometimes felt some confusion maybe from some of the students misunderstanding some of the kindness.
Oh yeah, all students generally have a teacher crush somewhere along the way.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have that many, but you know, some you're aware of, when you have to then, you know, you have to be clear with your boundaries. And again, it's like a pivot, and it's like, you know, bring it back to the task, look at the work, look at this, you know, so they trust that you're their teacher. So, in terms of attraction that you might feel towards someone else, say for example, you're there to host someone, they're coming, you open the door and you're just like, gosh, and suddenly your breath is taken away by someone. I mean, has anything ever happened like that? And how do you think, what would be your approach to make sure that you were somehow able to turn that part of your brain off? And somehow remain to be the professional host? What would your toolkit be for managing that?
With over 2,000 guests, yes, of course that's happened. I remember opening the door to one guest and thinking, oh, I'm in trouble. That was my inner dialogue. And then I said to myself, no, you're not. You have made your rule. You don't need to discuss it or negotiate it. The rule is, it ain't happening. Yeah. So nothing's happening. And nothing happened. Yeah. So that's how I think it was quite simple, really. Yeah. I was once told about anything is make the decision once. Right. And stick to that. And that's whether, do I wash this towel or not? Now, has this towel, does it look like it's been used? Because it looks exactly the same as it did when I put it out there yesterday. So, and I don't remember seeing the guest go, no, that's a conversation I never have, because day 2, I made the decision, every towel, every time, regardless of the circumstances, gets washed. Yeah. Period, boom, gone, done. You don't have that discussion. You don't know what they've done with that towel and made it look perfect again. You don't know. So it isn't a discussion. Yeah. It isn't up for negotiation or debate. And that's exactly how I treat attraction. It is not up for grabs. Yeah. It is not negotiated. It's just isn't. Yeah. Yeah. It's black as white as that. Yeah. So it's knowing your script again. Yes. Like it's sticking to the script. Make the decision once. Yeah. And yeah. Yeah. And I suppose, yeah. So we see, we acknowledge, and we put it away in a box. Yeah. It doesn't have a place in our space right now in this world. So Kate, can you come up with, or could you suggest a little saying or something like that that will enable hosts to be able to deal with attraction when it happens for them? So I'd say, obviously, first thing is you notice it. You notice that it's happened. And then just name it. Give yourself permission to just see that for yourself. And then put it in its box. And you neutralize it. And then you navigate around. And then come back to your script. Yes. Come back to your script.
Yeah, and you can put it on a little shelf in a little box and put it away over there. Come back to your script. Yeah.
Yep. And you asked me if it's ever happened to me, and I said, yes, of course it has.
Yeah.
So I opened the door, and
Yeah.
immediately I noticed it. I named it, and I actually said to myself, "You're in trouble." That's the way I that instant named it.
Yeah.
I then neutralized it because I actually said, "It ain't happening. Nothing is happening. This is completely off bounds. You made the decision, absolutely, and that is absolute." And then navigate it. And the way I navigate it is just treat that person exactly as I would everyone else.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're still, that was 2017. I'm thinking of that particular incident.
Yeah.
And there is still. I'm still in touch, actually, not just occasional emails, because there's a common investment that we occasionally communicate on, but it's hasn't been a problem.
No, exactly, because you'll then see them through the eyes of the professional and see them through the eyes of the best mate, of the colleague.
Yeah.
You know, that
as the
professional,
host.
as the host.
Run the host script.
Yeah, yeah. And I think this is the thing, like, you know, when I think quite often when actors are dysregulated, what I struggle to do is get them to see me afterwards, because they're still seeing through the eyes of their characters. They're still seeing through the situation, and they kind of see the world through like these blinkers. And I'm like, I know, I need to see you. I need you to see me. And there's this, you can almost choose the way you see. And the way I look at you, the way I choose to look at you is as a guest. I see you as a guest. I don't see you as a potential partner. I don't see you as a person of interest in this way. I see you as a guest. And that's the way I look at you. And your needs to be met are, do I have clean towels?
Yes,
Have they been washed after the
Have you got a
last
comfortable bed?
Have you got a comfortable bed? Exactly.
Are you getting on with everyone else in the house?
Yeah. Yeah. And I see through those eyes. I don't allow myself to see through the eyes of a potential life partner or lover. So
Or a one-night stand.
Or a one-night stand. No, I don't think that's a way to run a business.
No.
or not this kind of business anyway. No. That's another kind of business altogether.
Oh dear. Kate, thank you so much for agreeing to this conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thanks for having me in your little studio.
So where can people find you? Because you teach actors, you teach films, you teach schools, you teach. Did you teach schools? Did you say that? Or tell me exactly where you share your expertise.
So obviously we have a team of coordinators who will work on sets all around the world, and then we teach people to do the role of being an intimacy coordinator. But then we also go into drama schools, into film schools, and we then teach people, if they're actors in training, what they can ask for, what their contract should look like, and their writers. If it's filmmakers, about how they should write the content, how they should make safe spaces for performers and their crew to work in. And so my company is called Safe Sets.
Can you spell that?
Yeah. Safe as in safe and sets as in SETS, Safe Sets.
.co.uk?
Actually, it's a .coza. So because we're a South African company, so it's actually the full title is ssintimacycoordinators.com is our .com. But we're on Instagram, and so we're Safe Sets IC on Instagram, and so most of you can click through to the website from there, and our blogs. And we've got all sorts of things, and our various courses are all clickable through from there, from one thing to the next. So that's probably your best bet, your easiest way in.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
Amazing. Well, thank you for having me. It's been
Pleasure.
so fun.
Thank you. Can I give you the roses now? Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry. You shouldn't have. Roses.
Let's go to dinner.
Let's go to dinner. Let's do that.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.